Harrington.
Hello there, Clerk Moss, and welcome everyone. It is Tuesday, November 28th. This is Chair Catherine Harrington, and I'm joined with Commissioner Roy Rogers, Commissioner Nafisa Fai, and Commissioner Pam Treese. Our colleague, Commissioner Jerry Willie, is on a well-deserved vacation, and we hope he's not watching this meeting live. Or if he is, we know he'll watch it when he gets home for sure. Because this is very important work. We have a number of things on our agenda today. Our board and leadership communication will come at the end of our work session, as will formal agenda item discussion in case you had any questions or concerns so that staff can address those before our evening meeting tonight. But I want to let you know that I'll be writing out a thank you card for Terrence Song, who is coming off of the Clean Water Advisory Committee, so that I can get your signatures on it before departure today. So I just need to finish that up. So thank you to Courtney Duke-Drazen for sitting in on our meetings while our general counsel, Brad Anderson, is also on a vacation. So top to bottom, everyone deserves the opportunity to go on vacation, and we support that in our workplace. Without further ado, we're going to ask Aaron Calvert, our Assistant County Administrator, on all things public safety, justice, emergency management, and more, to take us through applicants for the Public Safety Coordinating Council. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and board. For the record, I'm Aaron Calvert, Assistant County Administrator, and here to present the applicants for the Public Safety Coordinating Council for terms starting on January 1st of 2024 and going through December 31st of 2025. Your packet.
1 second.
Yeah.
Nope, I got ahead of myself. Sorry, keep going.
Oh, no worries. There is not a PowerPoint for this. I'm just going to talk at you a little bit. But your packet does include the applications redacted, the member matrix with the recommended applicants' profiles, and then the PSCC bylaws and the statutes for your reference. There were 7 applicants. One applicant applied for a reappointment of the statutorily required position, which is the victim serving agency, and 6 other applicants applied for the 2 lay community member positions. 6 of them responded to a meet and greet style interview. Those were held over Zoom on October 31st and November 6th with an interview subcommittee that the PSCC chair, Todd Schaefer, convened. That committee included himself, Commissioner Willie, DA Barton, and Community Corrections Director Nate Gowiran. I want to thank them for the time they took to interview, and then also a community lay member, Susan Podzina, also volunteered, but we just couldn't get our schedules coordinated enough for her to join us. But the interviews went really well. The subcommittee considered the recommendations. Each candidate, as you might imagine, brought different backgrounds, different experiences and skills, and I think any one of them would do a great job in serving this council. But at the PSCC meeting on November 19th, the subcommittee presented the process and then their recommendations to the council. And after some discussion, the PSCC did vote to approve the recommendation to your board today to reappoint Jenny Gilmore Robinson, who would be in the position of the victim serving agency, to reappoint Melissa Laird into a lay community member position, and to appoint Deanna Palm into a lay community member position as well. And I can briefly review the member applicant profiles. Jenny Gilmore Robinson is the Executive Director of CARES Northwest, so that fits that victim serving agency position. Ms. Gilmore Robinson was appointed in an interim position in 2021 by your board after the current CARES Northwest Executive Director left the agency, and then she was appointed or reappointed officially by your board for the 22-23 term that's currently expiring. She is seeking reappointment. She previously served on the local Public Safety Coordinating Council in Lynn County. She would like to explore with PSCC the potential opportunities to put a stronger lens around the victim advocacy role and see how to get more involved. She believes that PSCC might be able to address some of the issues around the wait time of victims getting closure. And she identifies as white and female. And then the applicants for lay community members, again, reappointment for Melissa Laird. Miss Laird is a resident of District 2. She's seeking reappointment of another term of PSCC and is currently in a term. She's been very involved and active on PSCC. She participates in meetings. She participates in off-cycle training opportunities that are offered, and she's been present at many of your Board of County Commissioner meetings that involve issues of public safety and of course other topics as well. Ms. Laird has noted that she loves the diversity and the challenges that various leaders bring and is learning more about the skills, experiences, and knowledges of the challenges. She would like to be part of the solutions that will take place in the next few years. She's interested in her reappointment because 2 years seems too short. She's just gained a lot of knowledge and education on the system, and she feels finally sort of equipped to work on some of the solutions, and she's interested in doing what it takes to affect change. She does serve on other boards and commissions and is active as a volunteer in local government. Ms. Laird identifies as white and female.
But also, if I might
Mhm.
contribute, I believe her serving on some other county boards, they're like district specific,
True.
ESPD, URMD kind of things versus
Budget
county-wide,
show.
which PSCC is. So,
That's a great
yeah,
point.
yeah, thank you.
And then lastly, Deanna Palm. Ms. Palm is a resident of District 4. She was born and raised in Oregon, and she's lived in Washington County her entire life. She is the president of the Washington County Chamber. She has interest in ensuring that Washington County is the leader in preserving quality of life. She's interested in serving on the PSCC because she believes the business community should have a voice at the table, and she's interested in continuing to work with elected officials on ensuring the right level of funding goes to public safety in Washington County. She's interested in advocating for funding from the state to ensure that mandates receive essential funding. She's been active through the chamber in establishing priorities to share with Washington County legislators and to ensure the county has good headlines and is a place that people want to live, work, and spend time. And Ms. Palm identifies as white and female. And if your board agrees with these recommendations, I would plan to bring them forward at your business meeting on December 12th. And they would again be for the formal appointment beginning for the terms January 1 through December 31st of 2025. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, do you have any questions on these applicants or any comments you'd like to share? I have one.
Okay, sure.
This board, in adopting the equity resolution and providing direction to our county administrator, has made an effort to increase diversity on all of our boards and commissions, including the councils that have a role for satisfying state requirements. This committee is one where I have tried to engage folks from different cultures to take an interest in and apply. And that includes talking with some Latinx community leads here in our organization. So I wanted to share here that it's not for lack of trying, and I will continue to try. We've also, for example, not succeeded in encouraging members of the sheriff's office Latino Advisory Committee, which is just specific to how the sheriff goes about implementing the different requirements. We've not succeeded in growing further interest there for a variety of reasons that I can identify with. So, but I just wanted to share with all of you that that is something that we continue to be committed to. All the information from our organization about how they're going about their work and being culturally appropriate and responsive across the board comes through loud and clear, including with the public safety and justice paper. And I don't want anybody to I don't want anyone from our staff feeling like they need to have to defend why is the community not seeing more of a cultural mix on this board? If people have questions about that, I'm happy to take those calls.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, for mentioning that as well, and I appreciate that. One thing I forgot to mention is we did partner with OEICE. We know, building relationships takes time, right? And so we did partner with them and participated in the Civic Leaders Open House on boards and commissions that they did. And there was some really great conversations with folks. There was some interest. I mean, we have to have really candid conversations. Public Safety Coordinating Council is a member. I mean, the director, the nature of the people on by statute can be a little bit intimidating. I mean, I would
Yes.
say that in the room full of the DA and the directors. It is public safety and justice leaders. And that's, it was really good to have that conversation with the civic leaders because they all kind of laugh and like, yes, it's a big deal, but we still want voices at the table and want to invite them in. But to do that, we have to become really good partners and be able to have those conversations in everyday spaces.
Yep.
And then I think we'll get closer at hopefully bringing more diversity to the council. But I appreciate you raising that.
And this board is interested in engaging in all kinds of forums. So if that group, for example, wants to come to an evening with Chair Harrington, where we go over the public safety and justice paper to just help them get their heads around a really complex community serving setup, happy to do that. So you're all doing great work.
Thank you.
So we're all set for moving forward with the appointment.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, lickety split. We almost got through it in 10 minutes. If I didn't talk so much. General fund forecast. It's all about the numbers. So welcome, Mr. Young, Munn and Steve Kang. We are grateful for you. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Harrington, Board of Commissioners. For the record, my name is Greg Munn. I am joined by Steve King. We're both from the County Finance Office, and we're here today to talk about our budget forecast for 2024. So, there we go. So here's the agenda for today. If you think about this in a somewhat of a timeline, we're going to look back to about a year ago, and I'm going to share some slides from that period of time, and we're going to walk through to what progress we made from a year ago, where we are today, and then provide a forward-looking forecast into the next year, which will eventually help set us up with our budget direction. So this was a year ago, specifically it was November 9th of 2022, and this was the first time I had come to the board with direction on, or revealing the situation with the general fund and the general fund forecast. And so what I'm going to do is just go over some of those bullet points that we talked about back then, and then I'll give you a progress update on those that as we've been working on this last year. So last year, when we looked at our general fund, one of the concerns we had is that it was over dependent on one-time SIP dollars. We were spending in the last budget year about $43 million worth of SIP revenue, which is almost all of the SIP revenue that was received during that year. Our balance in our SIP fund was declining. The number up here that you see of 11 million at June 30th of 2022 was pre-audit. Our actual audited number was closer to $10 million. So we had a declining and low balance in our SIP funds. Our expenditures in the general fund historically over the previous 5 years had been growing much faster than our revenue, about 7.7% expenditure growth on average versus a 5.8% growth on our revenue side. Our contingency was also underfunded, and all of this together, as we were planning for this budget year that we're in now, left us with a projected gap of about $25 million. So that's where we were last year. And then just a few graphs that just summarize what I just mentioned, but you can see here, this is the general fund history over the last 5 years, fiscal 17 through fiscal 22. The red line is our expenditure growth, or our expenditure line, which is growing at about 7.7% per year. The dark green was our revenue line growing at 5.8% per year. And the gap in the middle has been funded with one-time SIP funds. And as we dive into the SIP funds a little bit further, this is what I shared with you a year ago, that we had gone from about $19 million in utilization of SIP revenue to 43 million in FY22. And if you extrapolate those lines out over the next 5 years, you can see that it grows quite considerably, much more of a gap all the way to $90 million. Two things I just want to point out on this graph. This was just a early forecast SIP fund. The two things to look at. One is the red line compared to the green line. The red line was our use of SIP, and the green line was our SIP revenue. So each year, going back to FY17, you can see the difference between the two. In some years, in most of the years, our expenditures were more than the revenue, but they were very close. But we were spending, in general, most of those dollars that were coming in. And the second point is FY23. I mentioned we had a projected ending fund balance, that dark blue line there. That was about $11 million, which turned out to be, in actuality, of about $10 million. So we had a declining balance. We were spending most of our SIP revenue. So that left us about this time last year with a need to find about $25 million in our general fund. And we did that initially through creating the budget process through 3 reduction scenarios. That was a 4%, a 7%, and 10%. And those cut scenarios were applied to all general fund departments or funded services, including internal service functions, which are entirely funded by the general fund, and also transfers, use of general fund dollars that gets transferred out for other departments. We also, during that process, we utilized more specific surgical focused reductions as opposed to a 4, 7, and 10. So it was just another way to look at reductions as opposed to these across the board reductions. We also were clear as we were talking about this, talking with the board and the board direction, was that we did assume that this would impact service levels. So we weren't saying that we were expecting reductions and to continue to do the same amount of work. We utilized position cost management techniques, basically vacancy management. We would review vacancies as they were coming open to determine whether or not we should continue those. We were looking at those options as they presented themselves. And then earlier than November of last year, I had presented budget redesign strategies, and overlaid on top of all this was the continuance of working on those budget redesign strategies. And to this day, we still do that. So that was the immediate needs. Then last year, we also talked about the future strategies. What do we need to be working on over the next few years to stabilize our budget? So this here is just to give you an update on what we talked about a year ago. So the first bullet there is resolve the unsustainable structural gap. Expenditures were growing faster than revenue. At this point, we expect that to continue just simply due to the difference between the cap on revenue growth imposed by our property tax system, Measure 50, compared to the market pressures on our costs. And so our market pressures are much higher than our revenue cap, and it's causing a challenge.
Don't interrupt your cadence, but have you put numbers to each of these as you go down? To me, that's about 22, 23 million bucks a year, just probably 23.
We have, in terms of the forecast that's coming up, and we'll share that with you here in a few slides.
Okay.
Another strategy for the future was to work on our policies. One of those was to fully fund our general fund contingency with 4 months worth of property taxes. That's coming to the board here shortly in February for your review and approval as part of our new budget policy. Same with SIP. We'll bring that back as part of our budget reserve policy moving forward and give us some guidelines on how to utilize those funds moving forward. Examine MISTIP library funding practices. The update there is that we're actually looking at debt service, how to fund these transportation projects using debt as opposed to an all cash basis, and what are the differences between the two to help the board make a decision on which way to go utilizing those SIP funds or the MISTIP funds. Align funding and service mandates to desired community outcomes. That'll be part of the longer term strategic planning work that,
Can I interrupt on that one? I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry. If you had more to say. Ms. Angie, this is where I'm reminded, but I need you to make sure I'm on the right journey. May not have all my facts straight. I believe you have the county service level assessment underway. To all you public safety and justice folks who have gone through the assessment paper, assessment is one of the programs we're doing a lot of across our agency to try and ensure that we're doing our part to provide the tools to the employees to do the job that we're asking of them. And so I was wondering, in seeing this item for the update, am I correct that we'll be getting that county service level assessment in June-ish?
That is what we expect at this point in time. We have the consultant on board and starting the process of working with departments. I say that's what we expect because there's times going through processes like this that you get into working with the departments and it takes a bit longer. So right now it's June and that is, to that bullet point, really understanding the funding, service mandates, at what level, Commissioner Rogers, this gets to the ask you've been asking for some time of who are we serving? What's the cost? What's the service level?
Okay, so it's not part of the strategic plan update, but is part of our implementing the strategic plan. That's what you meant by part of strategic planning work.
Correct.
That's
Correct. Yep.
what I was confusing our effort to do the strategic plan update with all the subsequent follow-up.
Can I just for your
Yes,
board and
please.
for members of the public, right now your board is undergoing a strategic plan update. We've had your roundtable session last month. We're prepping for your next session on December 4th and then January with the anticipation of board adoption of that strategic plan update in February. So this work will come after that strategic plan update. It will also not be completed in time for your fiscal year 25 budget process. I know that was a hope that the board had before. So I just want to use that opportunity to clarify that timing too.
We're talking about FY26 already. Time marches on, but we're doing so with better information than we've had previously. So thank you.
yeah, thanks for the clarification. I think that was important. The next bullet moves special revenue functions from the general fund to special revenue or enterprise funds. This is a technical accounting adjustment, but the purpose behind this is to narrow the services in the general fund that are primarily funded by the general fund. If they're funded elsewhere, we move them out. So it helps us with more transparency in the general fund and the ability to forecast and tell the general fund stories as we move forward.
And if I may add, Greg, this is a GFOA best practice as well.
Thank you.
Control growth and health insurance costs. This has been, if we probably looked at budget strategies over the last 20 years, this has been one of them. Probably every year. I can remember back to the year 2000 when we were talking about something very similar. But I just want to give you a quick update. Our initial projection on the cost increase to the county for health insurance moving into next year was over 20%. Our HR department and benefits led by Debbie have renegotiated and reorganized that. I know you've been briefed on this to reduce that forecast down to a little bit over 6%. We're not there yet. We don't exactly know what the numbers are until open enrollment is finished, but we think it's going to be a lot closer. It's a big swing. So that made a big difference. And that's a big component of our costs is health insurance.
What is the number? You know,
You won't know until after.
what is it normally?
It was over 20%, the projection.
It
No, I
varies from
understand.
year to year.
Dollars?
Dollars.
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head. We can get that for you. Okay, implement best practices, reserve policies. That will also be part of the budget policy update that's coming up here in February. and create a capital improvement plan and funding options. And as you know, we completed, the board approved the first 23 to 28 CIP. And as we move forward into the next 5-year cycle, we're already working on that with transportation, technology, and facilities. And so those will come together in the springtime for the board to review.
And I can follow up on Commissioner Rogers' question because I recently had asked that of Ms. Watkins. It's 42 million.
42 million.
Mhm.
So roughly, we
benefits.
have a 2% differential in revenue versus cost to cover it. Okay. Got another $8 million deal with, or not, no, 800,000. Okay. Yeah.
Cost of doing business, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so more specifically with the general fund, this was a slide I showed you earlier, but I'll give you a progress update on where we're at with this. So we initially said a year ago that we were using $43 million, projected to use $43 million of SIP funds to balance the general fund. Where we're sitting right now, we're projecting to use only 30 million of that in the last fiscal year. And that's down from 43 million the prior fiscal year. So it's moving in the right directions. There's some reasons for that will come out as part of this forecast update, but it's definitely moving in the right direction.
Could you clarify that for me? What I believe I heard is that we were projecting a $43 million use of SIP funds, and what we, in fact, looks like we're going to use is 30 million.
That's right.
Okay, and you're going to talk to us about why there's that delta?
Yeah, Steve will bring it up, but I'll just bring up two of the reasons are, one, we had a significant vacancy savings.
Right, I read that in there. Yeah,
That's one of them. And then the other is just our budget reductions that we made in the general.
that was the one I'm
Yeah.
more interested in. Thank you. Not that the others insignificant. But
Right, yeah. And tied to that, we're instead of a $10 million or $11 million SIP ending fund balance at the end of June of 22, we're looking at the end of 23 to have a projected ending fund balance in the SIP fund of $25 million.
Could I also, hang on the prior point. In FY 22, we needed to use 43 million. In FY 23, we projected needing to use 30 million. In addition to those things, we also changed the cost allocate. We instituted our first ever different cost allocation model that is truer to the reality. So no longer is the general fund carrying things that need to be carried by each of the departments. Okay,
so the
so
true up is,
yes, it's like a different model with more progress coming for this next fiscal year. Not as great necessarily, but we're finding that there were some oddities
sense.
where the general fund has been carrying things that it shouldn't need to.
I do remember that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really how this links to the greater longer term budget strategy and financial projections is that allows us to help determine the true cost of service and answer what is that true cost of service across the agency.
Great points. Expenditures are growing faster than revenue. We've talked about this already. We still are going to deal with that moving forward. Part of having a longer term forecast is we can see it coming at us years ahead and we can plan for it. Our new budget policy regarding our contingency will address fully funding our contingency, and then we'll also address over time creating an operating reserve in the SIP fund.
1 year, you're going to try to write that 16 million?
1 year? No,
Okay, it'll be.
over time. Yeah.
Okay.
And just an update. So a year ago, we were projecting a $25 million gap in the general fund that we needed to correct. In the end, once we got down to finalizing all of our numbers 6 months later, it ended up being a $22 million gap that we had to fill. All right, so that is just an update on where we were last year, how we've done so far moving forward. I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and we're going to talk about the forecast assumptions moving into FY25. But part of that conversation is obviously looking back a couple of years because it all builds up as we move forward. So I'll turn it over to Steve.
It was really helpful for helping me remember not only did we have a lot of work to do, but we made a lot of progress, continue to make progress. and that we should feel good about what we have ahead of us too.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good point.
Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. For the record, again, Steve Kang from Washington County Finance. Just wanted to go over some of the assumptions built into the general fund forecast. I think it is important to go over the assumptions so that we're on the same page. And as you have done so, if you have any questions, stop me at any time and just we'll go over any of the questions you guys might have. So the assumptions include the unaudited 22-23 actuals. This is missing a SIP transfer as of now. We're projecting to move about $30 million from SIP to general fund. This was originally budgeted at $40 million, so which is $10 million less than we've talked about it just a moment ago. For 23-24, it's based on the adopted budget with additional changes. And one of the changes, the district attorney's office PERS calculation changes that's impacting starting from January 24. And we have adopted fall supplemental budget. Those impact some of the general fund contingencies and the forecast beyond, and those are embedded. As far as the property tax revenue is concerned, we left it at budget. We looked at the actual AV calculations. It came pretty darn close to our budget. So we left the property tax revenue forecast at budget. This does include some of the expenditure spend rate. As you understand, budget is the ceiling. So we will never spend 100% of budget. It'll always be below 100%. Traditionally, I would say it's anywhere from 95 to 96%, but based on the trend, 23-24, we're projecting to spend roughly about 92.4% of our budget. For 24-25, we're still forecasting slightly less than the historical trend at the 94.6%.
That's 5.4% difference.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money. That's about $50 million.
Yeah, as I indicated, we traditionally spend about 4 to 5% less than the budget. So this would be representing just slightly below our.
And there's not enough
historical
savings
figure.
in there to do the contingency issues that you want to deal with.
Yeah, so let's let Steve roll through this and we can talk about that. Yeah.
So continuing on the assumptions for the 24-25, property tax revenue for 24-25, we're forecasting at 4.25%. The measure 5 and 50 limits at 3% increase, but we do have expansions within the county that brings up to 1.25% to 4.25%. Personnel services cost are adjusted based on the current projection of the CPI and other factors, and such as like health cost increases and so on. And our miscellaneous and revenues and expenditures, they're based on the 10-year average mostly. So we looked at projections for the actuals from past 10 years, and we used most of the items based on those trends. This does not reinstate 24 reductions. What that means is that we've implemented $4 million of the vacancy savings we put in. The forecast itself is carrying it on, $4 million.
40 or 4?
4.
4, thanks.
Those are the vacancy savings expectations. We are, when we are doing the 24-25 budget exercise, we're going to put those back in, but this forecast does not reinstate those amounts, just FYI. And general fund contingency and reserves, those are based on the pending policy, which includes 4 months of property taxes budgeted as contingency. What that means is that our property taxes actual year starts on the July 1st and at the June 30th. We don't start getting the property taxes until November. So that's why there's a 4 months of additional funding at the end of each fiscal year. And general operating revenues, reserves are actually held in SIP funds. So we're transferring SIP funds to general fund as needed basis, and rest of the reserves are sitting in SIP funds.
Could I ask you a question, please, about the vacancy? You said that we've got $4 million savings, but we're not projecting that for the future. Is that correct? Is that what I heard?
This projection does include that savings
Does include.
in there. But when we're doing the budget exercise with the departments, we're planning on pulling those out.
I just want to make sure that we're looking at at our staffing needs. So.
So this is the graph representing the revenues and expenditures and the fund balances or reserves. So red line is the expenditures and the blue line is the revenues. As you see, there was a little bit of a drop from 23 to 24. Those are the internal service funds moving out of the general fund, showing the reduction in both in revenues and the expenditures. As you see the green bar, there is a reserves, and you see it seems as if they're doing pretty good, and most of the savings are initiated by the vacancy savings that we're currently experiencing. And even with those vacancy savings, it does look a little grim in terms of where that balance is going, and that's because of the revenues and expenditure gap we still have in the system. If this graph represents if we were to experience normal vacancy rates, we're going to see the impacts immediately starting this year as well as next year. So by third year out, FY27, our fund balance is looking at negative. It's not to say we'll ever cross that line. It's just that we'll address the issue beforehand. But when we're looking at the existing services and the revenue and expenditure trend, if we leave it as is, we are going to see that fund balance go negative within 3 years or so.
I'm sorry, Steve. I need to go back to the previous slide. And I also need to bring it up on my screen so I can see the whole thing. Maybe I'll look at Commissioner Winter's screen. Yeah, so the difficulty with this projection, either one's fine. All of those green, since the purple line,
Those are
that's not zero, right? Zero is the line below the green.
correct.
And so I just want to bring voice to that because we've had some folks in our community be confused because of the way some things project or look. So the general fund continues through 25, 26 to be in the positive,
Yes.
right? What you're trying to point out here is things tend to cross over in that 4 or 5 year range, which is what I'm used to from government finance. Because our job is to maximize the resources we have for community benefit. So this is a normal planning process that I'm used to, where you always have this problem 4 or 5 years out. But what you do in those intervening years is you make adjustments to priorities. So we never have deficit spending. It's illegal for us to have deficit spending. So I checked this for myself on Sunday. But that was 2 days ago. So I needed to go back to it to remind myself of that. So thank you for being patient with me.
Just to add a point, this assumes that all vacancies are not filled. Is that correct?
Well-
Normal vacancies mean if you add back a person, you don't have a vacancy anymore.
So that's a good point. I was going to bring that up in this forecast because it's more than just that question. In the long run, we'll spend 96% of our budget, which means there could be 4% of a vacancy savings normally. But this last 2 years, we've had a significantly higher vacancy rate. So that little pullout arrow of 34,804 or something, that includes, that's a fund balance number. That's a projected fund balance number. That includes the additional vacancy savings that we've realized due to our vacancy. That's a super important point.
And that's what I was asking earlier.
I don't,
But moving forward in 26, 27, 27, 28, we have projected a more normal vacancy rate, our normal spend rate, which have been 96% of the budget versus 92.
yeah, right here.
Got it.
Yeah.
So that delta between the 92 and 96% of budget is the vacancy rate. Is that what you're saying?
Actually, the 92% essentially represents 8% vacancy rate versus 4% normal vacancy rate.
Right. Okay. Okay. Got it.
So this forecast is including any vacancy savings that we're going to see in the future as well. So this is including those vacancy savings.
Because unfortunately, it's still going to be, the labor landscape is going to continue to be difficult
Difficult. Right.
through fiscal 25.
Right. Right.
But just so that I know you're talking English to me, but we define terms differently.
It's okay.
Catherine's point was normal planning 4 years. I agree. Pam's point was, well, what does that exactly mean? And that's a good question. If we don't stay the course with the vacancy rates, meaning that we're not filling them, will that gap not widen?
If we continue to
I'm not
save,
even saying new programs.
if we
Getting-
continue to save money if we continue to have vacancy savings at this rate, it will push that green bar out into fiscal 26, fiscal 27, and so on.
Yeah.
And one way that I can demonstrate that is if we go to the next slide. So we're at 34.8 million. That little call out box now, there is 19. This projection assumes that we had normal vacancy rates. So this assumes that we're running at 96% of budget. So you can see the difference at the end of fiscal 25 under a normal scenario would be less than $20 million fund balance, which is below that purple line, which is our target fund balance. Whereas the previous graph, we're at that purple line and it's due to the vacancy savings.
Yep.
So it temporarily masks our fund balance declining projection by 11 million or $12 million.
The chair's point was an excellent one. If future boards all of a sudden say, gee, let's staff up, this is wonderful, you've got a big problem. You've got a really big problem.
Well, and honestly, that's part of us bringing these forecasts back to the board regularly. So, and ideally, it's not just during budget time, it ends up being during decision time. If there's a decision the board's making that's going to impact the fiscal future of the general fund, we'd want to show you what that impact would be by a simple graphic like this.
And we also know that in our practices, if we are successful in filling those vacancies, and the positions that we're hiring for, we're going to do the right thing and fill those positions to get the work done, because the work needs to be done. It's all threading a needle.
I have a question, Chair. I don't know if this is an information you're gonna present to understand a bit more about the vacancies, or if this is information that will be included in the service level assessment. But it would be good to know where the majority of this vacancy is housed in Washington County, which department faces the most difficulties in terms of filling these vacancies.
Well, I think one is known by your board, and that's the jail and jail deputies, for example. We can follow up with HR and see what quantitative information we can provide. And where we're seeing, actually just as recent as the last 3 or 4 months, we're actually seeing an increase in financial related, position applicants where that was not what was happening, 6, 9 months ago. So there's some changes just in the workforce market, right now, but, we'll have HR follow up with, more, information. The goal is not to hold these positions vacant. It is to try to get the individuals in the door, and there's just been the workforce challenges and that we've been seeing. And we, like I said, we are starting to see an uptick in some areas.
And so what has helped me in the past with our proposed budget and with adopted, there is a table in there about what vacancies we pulled back in order to have a
Didn't fill.
proposed budget. Yep. But also where we have additional vacancies that have been budgeted. And what Ms. Angie has spoken to is that interim mid-year, where are we doing progress and how is it going? And she'll get that.
And my concern here, as we talk about this together, is that we are messaging, and I feel very positive that we are, that those vacancies are a problem for us, and we're looking to fill them, especially when we look at our public safety and justice report and the impact that has. I want to make sure that that message gets to the public as well as when we're talking here.
I would love to have the problem of we have applicants ready to hire for every one of those positions.
No kidding.
Or maybe, where I was going with that question or so to the board was around, do we have a nimble enough policy that we can pivot some of that resources to departments that are ready to sort of hire? In terms of the public safety justice briefing paper, I think I remember the DA calling out the need for 2 investigators or whatnot. I think it was quantified. Or did I make that number up?
There's a difference though. That can't be done outside of a budget process. But what Ms. Angie does have is the vacancy management scheme. I don't remember what that phrase was you used. But no, we can't go outside of our annual budget process and our supplemental budget process.
There's
Yeah,
also a
from a
difference.
management standpoint, then, so let's use the DA example. If we take a vacancy from finance and we transfer the vacancy over to the DA, and because they have someone they can hire now, that's assuming it's dollar for dollar of what that position is, but then that position's filled. So how do we fill the need in finance too? So that's the reason those come through the supplemental budget process and or the annual budget. So there's that resource allocation that's documented, and then we're managing to your board adopted resource allocation.
Yeah. Yeah, I was more thinking sort of like then if there was something nimble policy where we would just circle back, like I have vacancies I'm not using, you circle down to the next person, and we just sort of match, but
Yeah. I honestly.
It's not that easy. I hear
Commissioner,
what you're
no,
saying.
actually, I wish that was the case. But I can confidently say that if I would ask every department and office across the county, they're stressed and strained and they would like additional FTE.
Thank you. Good time.
Thank you. I think it's a great transition to budget outlook for Mr. Munn.
Thank you. So moving forward to fiscal 25, we're a few months out. We're starting we've done a lot of the planning work ahead of time, and we have an engagement schedule with the board coming up, which I'll share on the next slide here. So then we're looking forward to FY 25. So just the outlook. Chair Harrington, you mentioned this first bullet is we continue to qualify new knowns. We don't know what we know until we know it, and we're learning new things all the time. So, and we'll continue to stay nimble with that. The second bullet, last year, we knew further reductions would be necessary in the future. Last year's goal was to get the general fund balanced and then begin to go through the initiatives that I shared with you earlier today. And knowing that it would mean some further likely reduction, right sizing that we'd have to do in this next budget cycle. And to get us to the point where those two lines that diverge in the future, we'll always manage to those. But again, we're managing 4 years out or 5 years out versus this year. So we want to keep pushing it out. And as you mentioned, that's very standard for local governments to look at a graphic like that. We will still need to continue to make permanent long-term reductions to avoid making reductions every year. So we'll get into that here as we talk about. Yeah, we do. Yeah, I'll share that with you. And what we just talked about was the third bullet, vacancy savings provide an unexpected but temporary cushion this year. So not that we were wanting that or desiring that, it's just a byproduct of our inability to hire folks in the general fund has provided us additional money, a cushion into the next year. So the next area is that we'll be seeking county budget direction, and that will come up at the discussion at the December 7th roundtable. Look for just the direction from the board. And at this point, staff is suggesting at least two scenarios. One would be a flat budget, which means this year's budget rolling forward to next year with known or contracted increases included. For example, those related to labor, those related to other contracts that we have long-term contracts, just to meet like a 3% increase on a software agreement or something like that. That would be a flat budget or a 3% reduction and possibly one other reduction scenario. So again, to give staff some tools to be able to not have to spread 3% necessarily across the county or across the general fund, but to be able to have a little bit more options in terms of reductions moving forward with building our budget next year. The other point there is new/expanded programs and service levels would only be with new revenue. And I think you could also say either with new revenue or with reductions elsewhere. So it's either savings that can be elsewhere or new revenue that comes to the county.
I need to stick on this point for a second. New, expanded programs, service levels only with new revenue. So on that last point, there are departments across the agency that historically have said, well, of course you need to increase our head count because we've had population growth. And I completely understand why that has been put into practice. But our revenue doesn't grow with population growth. So this board, and this is where I'm grateful to serve with my colleagues, this board is forced continuously to acknowledge that, no, we don't just get to increase headcount because population in Washington County has grown. So that's where what you're talking about here is we started last year in acknowledging that we cannot continue to expand our service levels for our community, as painful as it is, right? In fact, we're going through this county service level assessment to try and have a better framework for balancing what our community wants, needs, and what we can provide, which is, it's very challenging. Kudos to the board for acknowledging that that's a system that we need to put together. And I'm grateful, Ms. Angie, for you and your staff for bringing additional tools, assessments, and facts to us. It's going to take us a little bit longer, but what we are faced with in order for Ms. Angie to provide us that by law balanced proposed budget for FY25 and then our adopting a balanced budget, we do know that it's going to impact the service levels that we're able to provide, which pains us all because this is public service. But we're gonna figure it out together.
This is the hard part.
This is the hard part. Yep.
Can I just reiterate, under the Board of County Commissioners budget direction, the second bullet, suggested scenarios for fiscal year 25, flat 3% reduction and possibly another additional reduction.
Yep.
And that is assuming that we do not reinstate the cuts from last year. So I want to just reiterate
right.
that point.
This isn't additive.
This is added to the cuts we already made last year.
So it is additive.
It's additive.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is restoring those.
We don't restore the cuts.
Right.
Yep.
We have a scenario.
So that becomes
Yep.
the
Base.
foundation or base.
Yep.
Last year.
And
last year
then-
The base.
Yep.
We're asking for departments to submit a flat, based on that base, a 3% and a potential additional percent cut scenario.
Got it. Okay.
So how did we come up with a recommended 3% reduction scenario? The 3%, so ideally, we would not be in a position where every year we're coming back asking the board to recommend reduction scenarios for departments to build into their budgets. Ideally, we would be able to, again, push this out several years and deal with it in the future versus dealing with it every single year. This 3% is just a simple number that gets us, if you see that green bar, it's meeting the reserve requirement in about fiscal 27. So it gets us several years. It buys us out there so that we can actually deal with planning into the future without having to do it every single year. That's the magic behind the 3%, the reason for it. And it minimizes the need for us to come back and have annual budget reductions every single year.
Can you help me with the math? $1 billion, 2% is about 20 million a year, and you've already said you got a 2% spread. That's 20 million. You said maybe 25, it could be, because we're over 1 billion. But you're only saying it's a 9.6 cuts.
This is just the general fund.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's the math.
Yep.
So you,
This is a quarter of our budget, overall budget.
so you're looking at other areas that you're going to have to.
Substitute 380 million for your 1 billion.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You might be, just a suggestion, I think that's a good clarification. Could you, on the slide, make it very clear that that's just the general fund?
The general.
Maybe everybody intuitively knows that, do they, I guess,
No, it's a very good point. That's why the previous slides have all been general fund forecast, right? Yeah.
I thought this one was skipping entity wide, but okay, I get it.
We can do that. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, so then,
Can you actually go back to that slide? One thing I do want to just underscore in forecast is based on what we know right now. And conditions can change. Your board has had several conversations on unfunded mandates or just conditions that we can't change. So while our goal is to minimize the need for annual budget cut exercises, that goal, this forecast is based on what we know today, not conditions that we don't know even within a month or two from now. So I just want that to be known.
And our staff is doing such a good job of qualifying for us what that legislation is requiring us across departments. So thank you.
and this will be helpful as we move forward and legislative options come up. Decisions will come up that we'll be able to use a model like this to be able to say, here's what the impact is over the long term. So that level of decision support is something else we're hoping to bring to the board.
You know, in some ways, it feels to me like a mixed message. We're asking our county administrator to come up with a 3% reduction scenario in the proposed budget work, which is pain, in order to minimize a big gain, minimize the need for annual budget cut exercises. I don't, as one of five, and I believe my colleagues are there too, but I don't intend to speak for you. It's painful to make you endure this every single year. This is not what we want. So as painful as it is to have to go through the work of producing a scenario and looking at the possibilities or the options, the goal is to get you out of this painful exercise. And I'm not sure that comes through.
And while we're talking about pain, could I, and maybe you're going to stop at the end and ask for questions. So
Go ahead.
I can wait till the end.
Ask it now.
Well, so if I go back to page 12 and we talk about the property tax revenue, and it's estimated at the plus 4.25%. That's the 3% plus any new construction. And we just read a memo today about population and changes in population that was sent to us by Stephen Roberts. And
Some of us haven't had the
well,
opportunity.
yeah, we've been doing. But my point is, how secure are we in that projection, the 4.25%?
Well, on an annual basis, next year, we should know within, 10 basis points
Okay.
or 20 basis points. 5 years from now,
Don't know.
it gets, yeah.
That's why we call them forecasts.
Oh, I get it. I get it. It's just that where we are today is not necessarily where I think we thought we would be in growth 10 years ago.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're way off.
Well, and that's why it's a forecast. I get it. I get all that. So thank you. Now we can go back to
But a
slide 16.
2007 study thought that our jail wouldn't be in the dire circumstances it is today
Either.
either. So
I was just thinking about the whole
Yeah.
money in, money out.
Need to know. It's good.
If I could ask slide number 16, a question on that, the last bullet point, or the one before that, the chair pointed out, minimize the need for annual budget cut exercise. That's referring in some way, the 3% equals 9.6 million plus FYI 2 4-year vacancy savings provides 4 to 5 years of budget stability.
Yep.
yeah,
Okay.
it's where I needed to see how this crossover point used to be over here. And now it's further out. So we've bought ourselves more than
Fine.
4 years here, takes it further out.
Intellectual honesty, that again, it's assuming no new mandates. That also is assuming there is a vacancy savings that if you all staffed up tomorrow, you'd have a whole different chart in front of us. So
That's right.
We're going to be wildly successful in convincing our state legislative colleagues that
that's your job. I'm not successful at that.
But even, we saw it listed here with the DA PERS contribution.
yeah, I was afraid it was effective July 1 of 2023. So
But they're in case in point.
That's good.
yeah, it's 125K hit for this current fiscal year
Mhm.
instead of 250,000 minimum,
Because of the
which is
6 months versus a year.
minimum for next year. Yep. Painful.
So this isn't the last time we'll share this graphic with you. As we learn more and we come back for budget updates, we'll continue to update this projection and highlighting those changes that occur between now and then. Okay, I think it's our last slide here, and this is a list of upcoming budget-related activities for the board that's on our horizon. And I just want to go over these, and if there's any input or comments, we could bring those up now. So at the roundtable coming up on the 7th, we're planning to discuss the budget committee calendar. I've reached out to all of the lay budget committee members and I've received 5 or 6 feedback. We'll summarize that, bring it back to the board at the roundtable. And then also just to receive your budget direction that we can move forward. So our budget kickoff, it's timely with our staff's budget kickoff is December 4th. So we'll have the budget direction at about the same time for them to move forward at building their budgets. Fast forward to January 11th roundtable. On that suggested agenda item there is to discuss options to fund several of the major projects we have, and how do we pay for transportation? How do we look at costs for the ERP? Where is that? How are we going to pay for that? And those sorts of things. There's several items, and to be able to hopefully we should know more by then. We can bring it back to the board to start to put some transparency on those. And then Philip and I are working on a communication plan for the budget process. We'll bring that to you for your input as well. January 23rd work session will be the first update on the budget contingency and reserve policy. That's the one that I was referring to as I was going through the updates. And the February 6th we'd be asking for the board to adopt that updated budget policy. And then moving into March and April would be review and approval of the next phase of the CIP, capital improvement plan.
I'll miss that January 23rd work session, so I'll need Jory's help to catch up as soon as I get back on that. So I'm prepared to do my part with my colleagues. The one thing, so I appreciate this layout. Did you want to keep going?
No.
Okay.
Mm.
I appreciate this layout. I'm personally struggling with the initial CIP that we have, the fact that for the MISTIP 3D and 3E projects, there's an existing $90 million gap. And we need to follow up with the second bonding for the, what I call the UGB expansion areas. And the effort that's going on right now to prioritize a 3F list, all while my problem is I don't understand the big math, which is unlike me. So it's a very uncomfortable place for me to be in. And so I've asked Jory to help set up a meeting with LUT, because I'm assuming I'm the only one that has that big math problem. And I am dedicated to make sure I correct my problem in time for that January 11th roundtable. So thank you, the rest of you, for being smarter than me.
I'm
willing to-
asking to invite myself to that meeting. So, but, well, yes, I think I need to understand more.
Okay, well, I'm hoping it's gonna be easy. But we'll see.
And staff has been working behind the scenes on those options exactly as you laid them out. So we should have options at least to consider by then, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And we will offer those one-on-ones to all the board members
Okay.
on that.
we're trying to get it set up in December before, so staff will have an idea if they need a follow-up with everybody before that roundtable too. Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other?
That's-
Comment first and then the question. The comment is that elected officials oftentimes don't have the time, expertise to go through all the numbers. And so you're proposing in slide, whatever that is, page 16 or something, yeah, 16, a 3% reduction scenario. CEO said, well, there could be others. Let's have that in the back of our mind. The problem for elected officials is that you say, okay, that's great, you guys put your time in. But if you're wrong, it's really difficult, so you're coming at only a 3% reduction. Here's my question. If you were to try to factor in some guess on some kind of funding for CIP, which most governments do, even if they don't know the exact number, they're putting an annual amount. If you were to try to fund your contingency issue, which I agree you have, would you still come back to the 3% reduction, or would it be different? Because if you don't come back saying yes to all of that, the 3%, then this board, which would be absent me, and then after next year, is gonna say, I don't, but I believed you. I thought the 3% was enough, and it may not be enough. To Tanya's point, I agree with her comment. She made a really outstanding comment that we need to be smart about this. Because this is a point in time that this board can either set a good glide path for a few years or a dismal failure about 3 years out and said, I didn't know. So my question is,
Yeah.
what would you do, Craig, if this was your business and you were the CEO and you said, I don't know if 3% is enough? I mean, would you stick with that number?
From what we know now, that would be the number I would stick with to achieve that long-term runway before we have to make reductions again. But again, just like with any budget, we're going to know more tomorrow. And as we roll through some of these options on funding these major projects, we're going to learn more as well. So it's always subject to change, but I think the important part here is that we keep looking at it. We keep diving into the numbers. We keep rerunning these projections. So as we get closer, our numbers get better and better.
And when in your mind, are you saying next year, or you're saying?
We'll probably rerun this probably by March, once we have
Okay.
but yeah. Definitely before we come back to budget committee. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's also why I have a big math problem.
I don't think that your problem is really a problem. I think you're just recognizing there's an issue.
Yeah.
I need to confirm my understanding.
So that's a polite way. I think.
And until I confirm my understanding, I assume I have made a mistake.
I think you're wrong.
Oh, well, okay,
I think you're wrong.
but I can own my problem. I own my understanding.
I know. I think you got it figured out.
We'll find out.
Well, that concludes our presentation. Is there any other questions or
I
comments?
want to just go back, Commissioner Rogers, that's why there's the TBD on another scenario to the conversation you and your colleagues have been having. And to the comments that I've made, I'm very cautious looking at this reduction scenario, very cautious. We know we're waiting on the facility condition index.
Right.
We know we're working through right now the bid process on our critical facility. We know there's really some of those pressing needs. And also we know that we have service drains across the county too. And so what is that right number? If I could wave a caution flag while we're looking at this slide, that would be the flag that I'm waving right now, that we have to be cautious and continue on this financial kind of path and planning. And do so with transparency and be mindful that service reductions have impacts on community too. So it's that balanced approach.
Right. One last quick thing. Chair, at the beginning, you talked about, Jerry can watch this session, but you can watch it, but I really hope that you have time to sit down with Commissioner Willie and go through this, because he's very well versed in budget issues, and I just personally want to make sure his voice is.
He's already reached out.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably is. Good.
From vacation?
Surprise.
Well, I guess,
I'm
but
not surprised.
I really,
Unlike me.
I support that, and I just.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think all of us are.
I appreciate you all coming on this journey, and this really is a journey. And our goal is to make this, to present the best information we can, use the best forecasting tools, and present you with the best options to help move us forward. So appreciate it.
I've done a great job helping us know the knowns.
Good job. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okie dokie, it's 3:15. We need a short break. But I'm also mindful of the fact that we have folks who are going to be waiting with bated breath for the next topic to start at 3:25. Is there any chance we can take just a 10-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. Thanks, everybody. Well, I don't know.
I disagree.
It may be, but I don't feel proficient to
All right, welcome back, commissioners. And back over
Get
to
a
you,
little-
Chair Harrington.
Treat for myself. Peanut butter cookie, if you'd like to buy it.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome back. I was just finishing this thank you notes that I need my colleagues to sign. We are on to our next topic, Public Safety and Justice Briefing Paper Version 2. I'd like to welcome Aaron Calvert, our Assistant County Administrator on all things public safety and justice and more. And we do have two other mics in case you need to call up other folks. I want your fellow team members to be comfortable in joining you as you see fit.
Great. Thank you, Chair Harrington. Good afternoon, Chair Harrington and commissioners. I'm Erin Calvert with the County Administrative Office. I'm joined today by many of the Public Safety and Justice Department leaders, along with their teams who assisted and contributed to the development of the Public Safety and Justice Briefing Paper, including this version 2, as requested by your board. And they are also here, as you mentioned, Chair Harrington, to come up to the table if needed to answer any questions as we go along the presentation. The purpose of the work session today is to highlight the updates to the Public Safety and Justice Briefing Paper version 2 and to review the proposed next steps with your board. By way of background, and as you know, back in July, Chair Harrington and the board requested a systems analysis, an assessment, and a status report of the public safety and justice system to include many of the systemic issues around state funding, the general fund expenditures that are outpacing our revenue, the strain of continued unfunded mandates, recruitment and retention challenges, and reduced custody capacity impacts on service delivery. And the team presented this as the Public Safety and Justice Briefing Paper at your work session on October 10th. So as a follow-up to that work session, in addition to the questions and topics that we discussed that day, I think that was a 2-hour work session. Many of you raised questions that day, and then we determined a next step would be to have one-on-one briefings to dig a little bit deeper into your questions and also surface any additional information that you wanted to see in the next version of the paper. And those meetings were really helpful in terms of building out this next version that we're presenting today. Contained in your packet is the briefing paper version 2. It was developed at the request of your board and in partnership with the directors and the subject matter experts. And then with an eye on just refining some of the points that were discussed in version 1. We took an integrated approach into the paper. And what I mean by that is you won't see a red line version. You won't be called to attention on what's new or what's added or what's edited or what's different. We heard your questions and the feedback, so we refined a lot of the areas of discussion. We aligned some of the prior slides into this paper, and then we updated the information that's contained in the supplemental packet just to reflect some consistency between the paper and the supplemental packet. And we added a few more graphs and charts for you as well.
Ms. Calvert,
Yeah.
before you continue, and just for all our public safety and justice partners here, I just want to commend staff for all of the staff hours that they've been putting into this work, and I know they will continue to do so. I, as one individual, am just so grateful. I know some worked through sicknesses, weekends, evenings, and I just want to underscore the significant lift that this work to date has been, and just it with appreciation.
Thank you. And thank you to the team.
Gift
Thank
of
you.
knowledge and information, and we are grateful for it, right, colleagues?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate that on behalf of all the public safety and justice professionals in the room today. Thank you. One thing I wanted to mention just about the dynamic and complexity of the information in the paper, it's kind of a tricky thing. Some of the information in the paper is really point in time data. So, and it lists that. So for example, on page 38 in the summary by the numbers, there's some information in that graph that is as of October 1st, 2023. But some of that information like FTE vacancies that will ebb and flow, but other things will stay static, such as just budgeted positions for right now, and then the cost of a detention bed, for example. And so I just think that's worth noting in the paper. There's some information that's really dynamic, complex, and changing. Some is point in time, and could be some confusion when you're reading this paper and that what is what information. And so I just want to call attention to that. Things could change in terms of service delivery based on a new law change or additional funding that we hope for, or reduction in funding. So just feel like I wanted to caveat that in the paper because both are true. Some point in time, some dynamic complexities for your consideration. And then the last thing to note on this packet is just the supplemental packet. I mentioned that we updated that to reflect and be consistent with the paper. I'm actually going to pause there to see if there's any questions about the paper that you want to go into. Because the next slide, I'll shift gears a little bit and talk with you about next steps and get some feedback from your board. And so we can save all the questions for the end, or I can pause here and see if there's any discussion or questions that you had about the paper itself.
I have a
So
question.
we can wait.
As you did your briefings with all of us,
Mhm.
and they were excellent, did you run into any questions that were in conflict or requests that were in conflict with any of us?
That's a great question, Commissioner Treese. No, I don't believe so. Some things we had to
Or were additive probably?
some things it was additive and we just had to pull out there was some themes, I think, around data, around some programming, some demographic numbers. So there were some themes that were consistent. I don't think anything was in contradiction of another though, but we had to pull out some of those details through conversation with all of you.
Well, just so that you and the stakeholders who gave us this gift know, I should have brought my first version so you could see all my tags. Today you see different color tags, right? These are not all questions. Purple is things that I feel very good about. I'm like ecstatic that I have that gift. It's not just that it's good. I'm ecstatic. There's a lot of purple tags there, right? So yeah, I do have some questions because I don't think I get it sometimes. And it's the nature of me. I have to confirm that I really internalized what you wanted me to know. It's my problem, not yours. And then you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 items where I think there's a citation item that just having a fresh set of eyes on version 2, like
Mhm.
there's a reference to a graph where the figure number changed, but the text and the graph number are out of sync, right? That's easy stuff.
Yep.
So I just can't tell you how excited I am and how grateful I am. You have pulled this together comprehensively for us. This is information that you've been teaching me for going on 5 years, right? A lot of things I understood, but I wasn't able to pull the connections together. And some is just realizing, oh, that's how all these things added up. So there aren't enough positive analogies or positive adjectives for me to use to let you know how powerful it is. I think one of the reasons why I appreciate that we're going to take some additional time on this is that we've been motivated to read all of the pages of this, and I have the supplemental pages in here too. And I don't know enough about how state legislators work to appreciate that they're going to read all 37 pages of the full paper, right? So that's where I need a little bit more time to fully digest. Okay, now that I've read this, what do I want to make sure are the key points that that we're offering, right? We don't have an executive summary yet because it's so bloody complicated. But we have that foundation now that we never had before, or not in the 5 years that I've been here. So, sorry, it wasn't a question. It was a very long-winded comment, but I
Well, thank you.
just want to put that out there up front.
It's actually a perfect segue for the next slide if you want me to
Oh,
go ahead.
Great.
And then, if there's other questions, I'm happy to take those as well. Chair Harrington, you just mentioned, thinking about the next steps and the key messages. And so in this slide, I'd really like to propose some ideas, to and with your board, of course, for consideration and discussion of creating a draft comprehensive communications plan. So I wonder, it might be best to accomplish this by more one-on-one briefings and then have a time to come back to your board in a work session for that full, more robust discussion. That's one way we could do that. But the proposal would really include drafting the proposed key messages and the key system challenge statements. So I do think there's some work to be done in extrapolating what some of the system challenge messages might be. And maybe underneath that is the key messages coming from them. And I think that's what you were probably just saying, Charrington.
Well, and if I could contribute from my viewpoint, we as a board are daylighting, we're more transparent than I think prior boards have been in sharing what we understand. And we've done some big problem solving together in my 5 years. Most recently, earlier this year, with the 4 critical facilities needing $48 million of repair and directing as much ARPA funding as we could for that immediate problem. It was hard problem solving, right? Big problem solving. And that's where we are with this system that this board, I know to my core, acknowledges the difficulty that our 4 service areas in public safety and justice are dealing with. And we know through our big problem solving, like with ARPA, like with the CIP, like with transportation funding, that we have to do enough work, because if we don't communicate it well, then it puts us in a deficit, into a hole that is harder to have forward momentum with. And that's why we just want to give you a chance to recover from just finishing the marathon that was this. Thank you for your openness to all of our questions, and recover from that and take a deep breath so that we can do that integrated problem solving as you've listed here, so that we have the set of key system challenge statements and key messages for how we move forward together as one Washington County, so that we can be engaged with our state legislators, right? Notice I'm weaving in that element of time. The element of time is not lost on us. Okay. We are going to get this done soon. We really will. And similarly with our Public Safety Coordinating Council, I know from joining Commissioner Willie at those meetings on a not quite monthly basis, that they are thirsting, particularly our lay members, to do their part to be champions for us. And so we have that engagement too. We're really not holding back. We're really just trying to increase our rate of success in being effective with our much needed ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so I would say after we have some conversation around what those key challenges and the system challenges are, to your point, we would draft a list of proposed potential solutions as well, working with the board, working with the public safety and justice leaders to address what those key system challenges and solutions would be. We could have further discussions and then a timeline development that would help us draft an engagement plan with legislators on support for state mandates, mandated services, and also what the impacts are, educating them a little bit more, working with them. and then providing a draft engagement plan with our local government leaders, community partners, stakeholders that would follow. So to all of your points, slowing this down a little bit, taking some time to really think through the process, looking at the timeline ahead. We know the short session's coming up as well. And so working this draft into that timeline through the beginning of next year. We'd really hope to have this information ready for you to go today, but I think we've all been talking about just the complexity of the system and just not going too fast, making sure that we're all working together on this. And I think just taking that additional time will help us come back to your board with just a better product and a timeline moving forward. And so with that, the last slide really is just what are your questions about either the paper and or the process moving forward? And do you have any feedback on the next steps that I've outlined today?
Board members, would you like me to dive in first?
You go ahead.
Please.
If you'd like, everyone do.
Happy to. Well, I can't say thank.
Second thought we want to.
Okay, go for it.
No, I can. Go on. I'll make a couple of 3 points in the mutter, do.
Go for it.
One, this is just me speaking. I understand it's broken in terms of the numbers of dollars. Our folks are working very hard. And we don't have the dollars to do what we need to do. We're not doing a wonderful service in the jails with underfunding and working out countless hours. We know that. DZA's office, a complete and I'm not going to use that word, a completely unfair system in the state of Oregon to fund other counties at a much different level when our caseloads are so high. So we all know the problem. The paper was done well. When I looked at it, I said, okay, you laid out what was there. I agreed to the point that ought to be written at about an 8th grade level with here's the problem and here's a solution. But unfortunately, when you have issues like 110 that are bringing this huge, or aid and assist, huge issues, what are we supposed to do about it? So I think probably everybody around this table is going to say it's the legislature, but I'm not even certain it's them. I mean, you have forces beyond them. Public is voting for things, they're expecting certain things, and we just have a complete mismatch of what people want and what they're willing to pay. I mean, this is insane. And my final point is a solution. I probably said this during when we talked. The only way out of this is more resources. We understand that, and I don't think you can continue to go to the state legislature and say, "Give us," because they hear that enough. At some point, we're probably going to have to do something other than just a temporary levy. We'll probably have to bundle them together and say, maybe it's a district, maybe it's something. We need to be creative about this and go out for adequate funding to solve these problems. Because this is Roy speaking. I don't have any confidence that this board in 25 probably going to get a lot of action from the legislature. Say we're here with a lot of. Even though we know they got surplus, and give us a whole bunch of money.
It's not you, it's the tree.
I know, it's me too, though. But I don't have confidence they're going to give us that money. I think that we just got through with the budget session, and we know the problems there. But this is one that I think the public may be willing to fund. And I think we need to be at least considering what the package would look like. What the bundle, and I would say that's all 4 of the areas. That wouldn't be just jails. I mean, it's a DA and, all of the services that we're offering. So that's my comments. Make it simple, make it easy. So we have a package for the legislature. They're not going to read this. If they read 3 or 4 bullets, some of them will, but I mean, 90% will not. And then what are we going to do about it internally? We can't always say what externally. I think we need to be brave enough to say, maybe we need to put out a $30-40 million levy. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's it going to take? You can't have people doing, juvenile services, all the services that we do at the kinds of money. I mean, it's crazy. It's absolutely, that's my opinion, nobody else, but it's just absolutely crazy. But we're trying to work harder. We know you can do it. Work faster. We know you can do it. Somehow you're going to solve it by your sweat. They aren't going to do it. It's got to be some money and investment. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. I appreciate that.
But wait, there's more. No, I'm just.
Yes, there is.
Saying you.
I have so much more. I really want to make sure I've said it enough. Thank you for this complete assessment of our county-funded public safety and justice system. And yes, we get funds from the state and feds as well, but it is our county system because, and thank you, Brenda, for getting me our shared state and county services chart. Public safety and justice is only one of the columns in what we are required to do as a county yes, I have copies if you need a copy. That's why the question you were asking earlier, when we were talking about the budget, well, is our system such that we could just add a couple of positions for one department? Well, unfortunately, every department has those asks as Ms. Angie talked about. And like it or not, we don't get to print money. So thank you. And, we are also blessed that Washington County is and has historically been a very safe community. And this board values that because guess what? We live here too. We don't want to see that in jeopardy, which is why we made the ask for such a comprehensive review and assessment. And what all of this summarizes for me, this is great data. It's the best overview and data set yet for this whole domain. And in this version 2 paper, you really helped me better see the underlying causes that are causes of some of this pain, right? They're clearly identified. For example, Senate Bill 1008. You subject matter experts have been teaching me as a local elected official generalist about all kinds of importance, values, intricacies, but I clearly know, and your paper covers how we have co-occurring mental health and substance use addiction issues that our public safety and justice system has not had to face in decades past. There are these new societal pressures, non-existent systems and planning that this board is working on, and we're working hard to rectify the CIP, the critical facilities, the end of life replacements for the roof and the HVAC systems for these 4 departments. Revenue shortfalls to costs are covered in this paper as well. The funded and unfunded mandates, I can much more clearly see. For our workforce recruitment, retention, and career development, there are more resource demands for that than we've dealt with in the past. We learned that quite simply, for example, with the marketing efforts that were made years ago, they yielded results. The paper talked about how we only had one vacancy. We're like, great, we're under budget pressure. Can we pause that for a year or 2? We did pause that. Guess what? Good experience, a good experiment, but with all research, sometimes it works out positively and sometimes you learn it doesn't work. There's the learning though, right? So we're looking at that. It's also tougher work, more dangerous adults in custody and justice-involved individuals. Holy smokes. You also used the word compounded. These problems you can take individually, but together, that compounding effect is just incredible. So I really tried over the course of the last 12 hours, tried to be crisper about the key messages and themes that I got out of this. Public safety and justice is one of many required systems that we in county government need to provide. We have a safe community here in Washington County. We value that, and we're committed to navigate our future options together so we retain that quality. And we're going to do it. I believe we're going to somehow succeed. Yes, we do need Governor Kotek and state legislators' attention, if for nothing else. Please, for the next few sessions, don't give us any more unfunded mandates. Because we're already suffering to achieve the ones that we have. But this board is dedicated to stabilizing and improving the system. Okay. So that you all have that takeaway. And I'm looking at all of you who were authors here of this paper. This board is dedicated to stabilizing the situation and making it better. We don't have all the answers yet, but we're working on it together. So I wanted to leave you with those thoughts. And I owe you letting you know what these 6 orange tags are. And we're going out to the brave new world in order to ensure that doesn't matter if it's any one of the 5 of us, there's virtual Jerry in that chair.
I like virtual Jerry.
Or
I like it a
any of
lot.
our 3 or 4
Aw.
great GRT members, our elected sheriff, our department directors, our ACA, it doesn't matter what forum you're about to go to. We are all able to do a better job of summarizing than I have here today. What we know we value public safety, and we're going to continue to deliver on that. How we're going to go about it will continue to vary year over year, as it always has. Okay. But we do need our governor and state legislators' help. Along with, we'll get to the community part. But we have to do that math, right? We'll figure it out. That's why we're here, working on that for the betterment of our community. So.
One thing you might want to add, or I'd add, is that I think there's urgency to this. I don't think this is something we can kick the can down the road. So it's not that we're going to study and study. We got to make a decision. I mean,
Yep.
Either that or decriminalize everything, shut down the jail and say, don't worry about it. Won't have any problems, I guess. But none of us believe in that. So we've got to do something soon.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
definitely urgent.
So I'd like to make a comment and thank you very much to everybody here in the room. And this may be repeating, Chair, some of the things that you've said, but it's really important to me that we all know and the public knows that the commission and everybody in this room is in partnership on this project, and that we're supportive. We recognize, and while I agree that there is an urgency to addressing this issue, as Commissioner Rogers outlined, I think that it's important to make sure that our public is aware, and I believe that our staff does a great job, that they're managing the situation well right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to say that, and to say it's difficult. We recognize that, and we want to make changes in the future to alleviate the issues that we face. But at the same time, I'm appreciative of the way that we have been coping with the situation as it is today. But when I look to the future, I have a lot of faith in how we're making changes here. So I don't want to alarm the public is what I'm saying here, that I live here like everybody else, and I feel very safe. And it's a wonderful place to live. So, and that's not, you know, with blinders on, that's a recognition of what problems we have. But I'm pleased that we're working together to be able to address those issues in the near future. So
Yep.
thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Yep, we're making short-term progress and we're working on a longer-term plan as well to advance all areas of the system. Yeah.
I'll make a quick comment, Chair. I would say echo everyone, what I've heard so far and just put a fine point there and say, I agree and ditto. And want to also extend my gratitude to all of you who worked on this paper and from what it was before, and all the data that you've added is not lost in all of us. So thank you so much. That took a lot of time to disaggregate, gather those data, and then also explain it in the paper, what those data and those graphs mean. And so I appreciate it. And I just want to say, just wrote down some words the chair was saying. I'm with you on this journey to stabilize the system or the situation. So we're working together and heading in that one Washington County direction.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Pine.
The one thing I want to ensure that Ms. Angie, Aaron Calvert, and Pat Garrett, the sheriff, Kevin Barton, the district attorney, Nate Gowie ran our director of community corrections, Ray Cameron, our director of juvenile services, and already I said Ms. Calvert. Do you leave this room today feeling confident that we are going to have our coordinated communications set up for early January so that we can engage with the state legislators with the short session so that they know, please don't impose more. And we're going to be back before the long session to explain further what we really need you to do. But in the meantime, we have this great paper that your legislative staff, I'm sure, would be happy to read for you.
I don't know. that I
I'm
can
putting
speak
you
for
on the
group,
spot.
But yeah, please come up. But I am confident that we are working through this together with a together message. So yes, I do have confidence. We have some more work to do in December to get there. So we're ready for early January, but I certainly, please pop up if anybody.
I'm actually just going to speak on behalf of the group.
Okay, Bill,
good.
thank you for
Say-
that. I was putting him on
And,
pressure.
and Clerk Moss and team, if you can bring back up the slide deck and the next step slide specifically. So staff have confidence that we can bring back these next steps and would really value that one-on-one kind of conversation with you through in December so that we can work through this, so we can land. And we will determine kind of what that engagement, what is the most strategic engagement plan with the legislators, because one meeting may not be the best approach. So we're working with our GR team to determine, you know, is it a multi-prong effort? What does that look like to really be clear on what those key messages are? And then from there, then going forward with the more broader engagement plan and engaging with the community. So we feel very confident. And sometimes, you know, the gift of time is also helpful so that this team can take a breath, and the feedback and the comments that you shared today are really helpful in starting to produce those key message statements, which complement the challenges that are already listed in the paper.
Yep. We know that all of your staff is under stress. And we want to make sure that we're successful in the rollout of this so that you know we're there as your partner, that our community knows we value the fact that we're a safe community and that we will remain a safe community together. So thank you
Great.
so
Thank you
much
very
for
much.
spending
Thank you for
time
your
with
time.
us.
Yes.
Really appreciate it. And enjoy our last week of November. So for our agenda today, we do have another couple of items, and I've misplaced my agenda. I know we have board and leadership communication and checking in on our agenda. I'll find it in a
Yes,
second.
Those
Oh,
are the
found
remaining
it.
items.
That's it.
Hey, my memory didn't do such a bad job after all. So Commissioner Rogers will be right back. Do we have any board members who would like to start?
I can start, but I just need to pull my notes.
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Takes a minute to go from a big topic like public safety and justice to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go next. Hi, hello, everyone. Seems very quiet now that the Public Safety Justice Department paper briefing is done. I wanted to just put the board mail some things that I've been working on in last couple weeks. I think we've been off for 2 weeks. I had the opportunity to attend Representative High Fam's Town Hall in Hillsborough with Counselor Beach Pace, and that went really well. It was very well attended, and I just want to extend our gratitude to him and my gratitude to him to hosting his town hall and inviting us. And then this week, or was it last week, I attended my last statewide toll rulemaking advisory commission, that extra committee that's been meeting for quite a few months now. We had our last meeting in November 17th. We reviewed and provided feedback on draft rules on tolling, and then also reviewed and edited equity impact statements about what tolling would mean for the community. And then in terms of next step for that committee, now that it is sunsetted, the draft rules feedback is going to, the feedback we provided is going to OTC for their December 11th meeting, where they'll have discussions like we just had on our briefing paper. And then there will be a public comment period beginning in April of next year. And then OTC is expected to adopt the statewide rules on tolling in June 2024. So tolling is happening. And then I also had yesterday really a good RTEC meeting. So there are a lot of tolling happening, but
Can you remind me, is RTEC convened by the state or Metro?
Convened by ODOT.
ODOT, so the state. Okay, got it.
So that group is to advise or make recommendations to the director of ODOT, Director Strickler. And we started advising about the tolling projects around I-5, 205, and then now we're just working on the Abernathy Bridge toll scenario trade-off. So we had a discussion about that analysis and what that trade-off was. And then we also reviewed a financial overview. We got a financial overview of the Abernathy Bridge toll financial planning scenarios, modeling, and revenue assumptions. And we didn't get to the revenue sharing piece of that, but it's a big project. So we're just now talking about the Abernathy Bridge, which is 7 miles. 7 miles.
Yep. Tolling, it's
Oh,
complicated. It's a regional thing.
Yeah, and then a lot of the members, because of the governor asked to pause for tolling collections. She, in their letter, and she requested a couple plans, implementation plans. One was equity plan, and then the other one was a mitigation diversion, implementation plan. And ODOT yesterday reviewed, the plan that they want to submit to the governor. So finally, they're out because she requested this December, and it's finally happening. A lot of people were criticizing ODOT around, or not criticizing, just being vocal about, hey, where's the plan the governor requested? Can you share with us? Can you share with us? So yesterday they went over the outlines of what will be included, the questions they intend to answer in those implementation plans. What have they heard around equity related? What have they heard about the diversion and mitigation? So it's going to be an interesting plan to read, and people wanted to provide comments as well. So I'll keep, as soon as it hits me or in our GR staff, will share with the board. Something you can read in your leisure time, but it would be good to know what the governor is getting.
But what this board, since the board only has so much time and political capital,
Mhm.
what we have outlined as our direction, looking ahead, is to ensure that the county we've taken a position that we want to make sure we support those parts of the county that will be most directly impacted by implementation of tolling.
Yes.
So I'll use shorthand South County.
Mhm.
So what I need you to help summarize for me is when that document is available for review, and what is unclear to me at this juncture is how our jurisdictional partners are organizing themselves on their own, using their staff, because we don't have copious staff to do this work for them, to come together with what their wishes are so that we can attempt to be supportive. Because I don't think we have time and bandwidth to go through a 1 hour briefing each of us and then have a 1 hour work session. So it's going to demand that you work with our GR team to figure out, and maybe with LUT county LUT can't do this work for those cities.
Yeah.
The cities, the burden is on them. They may not like it, but it is. So we've got to figure that out. Because we don't have the bandwidth to do it. Not us as a board, not our staff. So anyway, challenge.
It's it, yeah. And I think my time ran out. Yeah, I have a couple of things, but I'll
well-
update it next week.
We'll see. We'll see.
I'll go next. First of all, I had a great holiday weekend. I'm sure all of you did as well. It was nice to have that time off. The previous week I did attend remotely, but I attended the AOC conference. I know Commissioner Fye and Chair Harrington were there, as well as members of our staff. So thank you for being there and representing, but I got my votes in there too. So that's what was important to me. I had a meeting with Lori Waldo. Lori is a constituent of mine, and many people are nodding their heads. They know Lori. The main purpose of her meeting with me was to talk about the flight patterns that are changing with changes at the airport and through the Port of Portland. So I'm trying to match her up with the appropriate people at the port to discuss that. But she also, she shared a perspective that I want to share here. And, we don't always hear the good news. And what she said was that she was appreciative of the county and the work that was done to expand our trail systems and also all outdoor spaces, but also the work that we did in relationship to expanding the code for porches and the size of porches on houses. Because what she said was, who knew that we would really need those during the pandemic? And it was an interesting discussion, which she said it was really, it was great forethought on the county's partners. Well, I'm not sure about that. We knew about the pandemic, but, but thank you. But it was good news for, especially directed at LUT. She also is interested in talking more about what's happening at the county, and I'm really pleased to have the conversations with her. I attended the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization meeting, the RDPO. And as always, it's great to have John Wheeler, because we're talking on Teams about the issues that are being presented at RDPO. And it was an overview of the watch command model that the city of Portland is looking at introducing. And I was texting with John on the side about whether or not that was an appropriate, and I can't give you the details on what that is, but I can talk to you about.
Watch command model, who are they watching and who are they trying to command?
Well, I said, I don't know that I can give you
Oh,
the details on that.
Good boy.
But it's just so nice to talk with John about these things, because I'm going to read you a little of what he said to me. First of all, he had already discussed it with the individual who was making the presentation. And he said, I like the concept, but I'm unsure if we have the demand for it right now here in Washington County, to the extent that we could commit funds for it. I know Portland is very interested, but they have more incidents and they're willing to make it a regional service. So it's just, my point is, it's really good to have somebody that has the relationships built across the region, as well as the knowledge base that I frankly can depend on in that meeting. This upcoming week, I have the MPAC coordinating committee meeting where we start coordinating the MPAC meeting agendas and those types of things. In December, we're going to be meeting at the zoo. And so it's kind of exciting to do that during zoo lights, and hopefully people will bring their families and meet them afterwards for zoo lights. I'll be moving into the chair position in January. Our coordinating meetings, we're having a little trouble figuring out when I'm available, as well as the vice chair from the mayor of Oregon City. So we're working on that right now. I also have the West Side Multimodal Improvement Study Steering Committee meeting next week. There's a packet that's out about that meeting. I'm meeting at 5 o'clock today with Stephen Roberts and others from LUT to discuss that. I do have a conflict because I'm also, thank you, Chair, sitting on the Waste-Free Policy Advisory Policy Task Force. And that kickoff meeting is the same time as the West Side Multimodal Improvement Study meeting in the same location. They're both at Metro at the same time. So right now, what Maida and I are thinking about is that we will go together and she will attend part. Yeah, we'll switch off and see how we can cover this. So that's what's going on. And also I'll be attending Sheriff Massey's, almost a Sheriff Massey, what sheriff-elect, is she? What is she? Is she
Under sheriff.
Under sheriff right now?
Incoming
but
sheriff.
Incoming sheriff, okay. Her swearing in ceremony this Friday, and I'm really looking forward to that as well. So,
Well, back to Lori Waldo. I remember when Philip Bramsford came to the CCI in the mid 2000s, when I had during my community advocate days to the CCI about what was then the County Strategic Plan Update 2020.
and was Lori involved in that?
She was a member of CCI as well. So if you wouldn't mind making sure when we have the strategic plan update coming up, asking her if she'll review it for us.
I will absolutely do that.
And see how it feels for the 21st century that we're all experiencing now.
Well, and we talked about the work that she did in relationship to incorporation of Bethany. And so she has a long history here, and really things that we're grappling now are the things that she's been aware of for a very long time. So it was great to talk with her.
goes to the topic that Commissioner Rogers talked about. People want lots of things, but they don't necessarily want to pay for them.
And that was her message to me, her frustrated message to me
Yes,
as well.
Yes, unfortunately, sadly. Commissioner Rogers, how about you?
To that point, I can remember when the county put a vector controlled district on the ballot, overwhelmingly approved. Second point was, will you fund it? Overwhelmingly defeated.
We don't like mosquitoes, but we want you to deal with it
Yeah.
without money.
The rural roads issue was the same thing. We just
Yep.
had the urban roads. The rural people said, well, we like that, put it on. So we put it on, overwhelmingly defeated on the funding. Well, mine's not quite as illustrious. I had the time off as you did. Seems like every time I attended the meeting for you.
Yeah, WCVA Board of
Yeah,
Directors
it
meeting.
was
Thank you.
interesting, and they had a topic about what the county is requesting in terms of some of their dollars to fund various projects. And I said, well, what's the decision? And it became very apparent that maybe they hadn't discussed that too much. So I'm not sure what I learned about there, other than that they haven't discussed it much, but there's been side conversations going on. So that's kind of interesting. In regard, I'm sorry, I would just want to say something to the sheriff real quickly, and I
Yeah.
didn't hear your presentation, but the tolling with the West Side Modal Project is really now flaring. Especially when you pick 217, from the Peter Court property down past us and Tigard, and then you take 26 out to 185th, the Corn Pass, or wherever you're going to go. This board is going to see a lot of businesses who are now going to say, we're concerned. It was somebody else's problem when it went on I-5 or I-205, but now it's going to be very difficult. And diversion is probably the biggest issue. 217, for example, I just can't imagine how you do that. Remember, we all, as a three county, came together and agreed on three big projects. One was 217, one I-205, and Rose Quarter. We all were solid. We were first, we got our funding. But now to say that somehow we're going to pay to use 217 averages, I mean, that's a little difficult to understand. And I'll go back just to give you some history on the 26. I can still remember arguing with a certain commissioner from Multnomah County by the name of Earl Blumenauer, who said, Roy, you just got the rail. You don't need any more work out on 26, and you don't need any more tunnel improvement. You don't need any of that. And he was more persuasive than I was. He killed that for a long time. So for now, for us to say to our citizens, it's going to toll. This is going to get. Anyway, it's an issue. I've got next Monday night. I have the Region 1 Act meeting. Basically, it's updates in regard to the I-5 bridge. Yeah, they just talk about that. They're talking about their funding issues, which is alarming to me. And probably you hear it too, if he said that it seems to say we're out of money, so we're looking for where we can get it. The obvious two places are cut the local share, and the other is less toll, because that's an easy one. We got it. We don't have to go anywhere for approval. I think IP4 is going to maybe weigh in on that topic. There is I've had many calendar invites for WA. In your day, we had a meeting. And it was meeting. Now they're canceling them. So I'm not quite sure what that's all about. But we do have one that I'll pick on Mark about. He didn't even know the one that's coming up that they're going to recognize his service. It's the one, the West Side. I forget even what that's called, but it's on the Monday. Yeah. Yeah.
To the future, I think.
Yeah. Futures. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think that is it's not.
Congratulations, Mark.
I do have a schedule problem, and I need to chat how we're going to do that. And it's on the meeting the 7th, and I really want to attend that meeting, but it's exactly in the morning, the same time as the ACT meeting.
What meeting?
The Region 1 Act?
No, it's a statewide ACT chairs are meeting with the board. They would like.
I don't understand
The
what.
round table.
Yeah.
Remember
Oh,
the
our
heads
round
up
table.
Yes, I'm
was,
sorry.
it's gonna
Yeah, that's
be a
Thursday.
Full day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you'll join us when you can join us.
Well, what I'm thinking is if Clean Water would be nice enough to host me with a Zoom link, maybe when I don't have to be there, I could just run down to the meeting, so I could be, I mean,
Be both, you can zoom into that meeting and then come into our next.
Well, I'd be there.
Well,
So I-
well,
Yeah,
Ms. Angie will have to look into the logistics.
so if I could do that, then I could just run on down and, you know, and be in the meeting. They just like the chairs of various regions and to do it, and it's particularly important that I do this one because there's some politics in it.
We'll work through it. We'll
Yeah.
work through it.
Yeah, so I'll stop. I've never taken this much time in my life, so I'll stop. I don't know what to do with it. You get my 18 seconds.
Oh, boy, I'll use them all, believe me. I think I mentioned previously that Metro has started conversations about a potential evolution of the supportive housing services revenues through a potential measure change to the voters that might also include taking revenues that have resulted from our having realistic revenue forecasts, right? The actuals, because of the fact that the wages for higher wage earners has increased faster than forecasted, has resulted in revenues that previously weren't forecast. And since there are many high wage earners that have activated their voices through some business groups, there is this exploration going on. It's early days, but what I'm really trying to get to is if Metro were to be successful with a potential measure in November of 2024, we already know they're working on a zoo bond update for the May election. That would necessitate, well, I went through and cleaned off a majority of my desk and files in the 3 days last week. And in that, getting organized for these upcoming conversations, I found the timeline that I put together for myself of all the touch points that we had together as a board in advance of the referral of the SHS measure.
Really?
And it was a lot. And guess what? We don't currently have that programmed into our first half 2024 rolling agenda or workload. And it's a challenge. So I've got some further problem solving to do with Ms. Angie, unfortunately. She's probably getting tired of problem solving with me so that we can make highest and best use of your time. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. So I also have something new. And looking at the calendar today, I thought I had a way to work this out, but now I don't. So we know that the WCCC has a workshop coming up, I think it's next Monday.
Yeah.
And it's related to the MISTIP prioritization and planning. But in addition to that, in the work of our staff, meeting our needs to satisfy the administration of MISTIP, has found themselves in a situation where when WCCC chose to change the leadership model for a county city shared model with the chair and the vice chair, for the last year or so, they've had just 2 city reps for the leadership. And as can happen, when mayors go to a common convening, it can cause a problem with leadership of these meetings. So our staff has made a recommendation to them that they have 2 vice chairs. Well, I've also in being informed with that, because one of our local mayors asserted that we were requesting changes when that wasn't the case, have come to realize that through the chair mayor meetings, as well as our staff planning out MISTIP, that our mayors seem to think that they get to direct our staff. And also, I'm really wondering, Ms. Angie, how much staffing do we provide to WCCC? Because we've been talking a lot about how we don't have enough staff to do the work. And also with some of what's happened, our director has been put in a very awkward position of mayors thinking that they direct our staff directly. So I was hoping that I asked Commissioner Fye if she could forward the bylaws to us and then the MISTIP administrative rules, right? Because I rely upon the fact that WCCC advises us on MISTIP and also advises us on the TDT. They play more than advisement on TDT so that we have a streamlined system. So that word streamline really struck me today. I'm not sure that we have a streamlined system to in order to get the advisement that the board needs for the county transportation plan and for the administration of MISTIP and TDT. So I was thinking earlier today that, oh, well, if Commissioner Fye sends that to us, we'll have a chance to look at it before Thursday and then chat about it in our Thursday roundtable. Well, I made a little mistake with the calendar. Our roundtable isn't until Thursday, the 7th. So I just want to let you know that I think this is something that we should, one, I would like us to ask Ms. Angie to work with the director to put together an initial assessment of what the staffing level impact is for Washington County staff to WCCC, and how we can ensure that our director is not in an awkward position that he often finds himself in with mayors wanting to direct Washington County staff resources for, frankly, perhaps work that the cities need to convene amongst themselves. And they are far more organized now as city mayors. They meet as Washington County city mayors. They meet as the mayors with the Metropolitan Mayors Coalition. And so I'm wondering if there maybe is some streamlining.
Could I ask a question
Sure.
about that? Because I did take a look at Commissioner Fye's email, and I believe I didn't see, there was the bylaws for WCCC, and then the rules of procedure. I thought looks like it's for the commissioners.
Oh, did I
Not-
attach the wrong one?
I think so.
Okay,
I think.
I'll
I
send the
think
right-
so.
Not rules of procedure, it should be the MISTIP
Yeah.
administrative.
Yeah,
rules.
yeah. Thank
Yes,
you.
That's what I should include.
Yeah,
Okay.
I just.
Yeah, I'll forward it right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks.
I haven't even seen the email, so
Yeah.
you're 10 steps ahead of me there, Commissioner Treese. Thank you. And then the last thing I wanted to make sure we all had attention to, and I think this will be helpful for our evening meeting, is in our constituent report. We've received what I consider a very helpful memo from DLCD. So you want to take a look at that. It's from the DLCD director,
Yes.
Bateman, Brenda Bateman. And it's a simple
Mhm.
2-pagers. But it really lays out for us that the state has not acknowledged the city's process for public engagement. And the city has not reviewed, excuse me, the department has not reviewed the city's UGB expansion proposal and has not taken a position about the city's process for public engagement. And also that the forecast is not locked in by state acknowledgement of the employment opportunity analysis and housing needs analysis. Anyway, I didn't mean to try and summarize it, rather just to call your attention to it before our public hearing this evening.
Are we going to go over the agenda? Because I have
Yes.
3 questions in regard to.
Well, why don't we jump there and then finish on leadership communication? So to our agenda, which was modified, the consent agenda has 14 items and we have 2 different public hearings. Go for it.
Courtney, my question in regard to the North Plains issue. I've said it here and I firmly believe the city of North Plains did everything they could do right. I think they've done a good process, but there is a citizen initiative and I know your recommendation. So my questions are, if this board, and looking for some guidance, if this board were to say, we just push ahead, what would that mean to the initiative process of the citizens? Or if we just simply said, we're not going to take any action until after, which is what your recommendation is to wait until after the initiative. Is that cause for any legal action by any
No.
parties?
We had a work session on this.
I know, I remember, but I just wanted to hear her take. I don't know that I know it. And she's going to be sitting in the chair tonight.
Okay.
So under our ordinance, we're going to have the public meeting tonight. To be clear, staff's recommendation, they're much more, they're experts at this more than I am in this area. And their recommendation is to continue the hearing to a date certain, which is what our ordinance, our codes allow us to do. So our charter on land use, I'm getting a little feedback, land use ordinance. So no legal liability or exposure.
Either way, if we were to go ahead and say, if there were a majority who said, let's go ahead and approve it or disapprove it, or if we defer it, there's no legal action on any of those.
That's correct.
Okay,
I think your second question is not one for me. It's not a legal question per se. I mean, the implications are not legal, but there'd be no legal exposure.
That's what I was interested in, is legal exposure, because I'm fine. Well, staff recommendation, but I thought if there's some legal issue. Okay, thank you. The only thing I have on the agenda.
Could I ask a question about this? The letter from the DLCD, was that requested by somebody?
No, I think that DLCD got some feedback about topics that were raised at the November 15th Planning Commission meeting, just like we heard.
I'm looking at it, yeah.
Yep, and because of that, they have heard several comments that appeared to represent departmental positions on various topics, and
they
they
corrected
wanted to go on the record to correct those statements.
And I guess my question is, I assume that DLCD does not watch all of the planning commission meetings. So that this must have been brought to their attention in some way.
I don't know.
It doesn't state why, but I really appreciated the feedback here. So.
Just clarification.
Are there, I failed to mention that the reason the consent agenda changed was to move the approving of the intergovernmental agreement between City of Hillsborough and Clean Water Services to the action. So thank you for being in the room with us for that.
You're attending tonight? Oh, good.
Diane's knee surgery went
Went
well.
well. Yeah, that's what I was saying, that she had, she's out running marathons.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Playing hopscotch.
All righty, leadership communication.
Well, good afternoon, board. So this is a change of order of agenda. So I do want to just bring to your attention in conversation and just planning with the chair, requested that the BCC communications and leadership be at the end of the meeting, just so the board can get through their business at the beginning of the meeting. So that will just be an ongoing process.
We're gonna do
moving
this into the future.
forward.
We're gonna try it
Yep.
for a while.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Thank you for clarifying. I just thought, because we've run out of times before, so.
Correct. And sometimes
I did
if the
not-
board runs out of time during communications and leadership, it can be a challenge when there is a 10 o'clock board meeting and staff having enough time from a staff perspective to get prepped with the technology, you know, that important stuff we need for meetings. So I do want to lift up, yesterday I had sent to your board really not a routine meeting that was going to be held today. Governor Kotek had gathered the housing authority directors, not board of directors, the executive directors of the housing authority. And to our knowledge, and we had confirmed to, no elected officials were invited to that meeting. Her agenda was to remind us that her executive order is winding down and will expire on January 10th, 2024. She acknowledged that many of the goals have been met, but some of the rehousing goals still need to be attained statewide. And so wanted to learn more from a staff perspective. What were some of the challenges in meeting those goals? What are the barriers? So I'm just going to lift up a couple of those items. Staff are working on a comprehensive email to send to your board with more information. This just occurred just today. So I'm giving you what I know as of now. Some items that were highlighted with challenges with housing, utility companies experiencing supply chain challenges, causing hundreds of potential units to be delayed in delivery, insurance rate and premium hikes for especially riskier buildings, the needs for rental assistance and supportive services for some of the residents, more housing supply overall to better match the demand with supply, and there's others. So the email will that staff are currently working on will give more comprehensive update. There were no asks or requests that the governor made at this meeting. It was just really wanting to understand what the challenges were.
Also fill in, I have asked Ms. Angie to deliver to us a summary of what the executive order resources have provided to us, because going through my records, we haven't had any communication since August.
So that was the second point that I was actually going to mention, is the email that I will be sending to your board will actually include that information.
So Governor Kotek
Yeah.
has a better idea than we do. Yeah.
The email will be sent to your board.
Yep.
Better idea about how to solve the housing problem?
No, what I am being testy, because Governor Kotek is reaching into our staff on a regular basis.
Next update, moving on. I mentioned the board leadership and formal agenda. So for awareness, I will be in Bentonville, Arkansas on Thursday through Sunday for my first ICMA board meeting. Bentonville, Arkansas. Yes.
In Arkansas.
Also, as we just had budget discussions today, I just want to remind the board, Washington County does not pay for any of my travel, meal, lodging expenses for the ICMA board travel. Those are paid directly, reimbursed to me personally from ICMA. Working with CFO Greg Munn, and then also County Council Anderson. not having the county pay and reimburse the county keeps our financials, it keeps everything clear. So I just, in a public meeting, wanted just to publicly state
Thank you.
what was occurring. And that concludes my, oh, and Ms. Calvert will be covering while I'm gone. And that concludes my update.
We're always in good hands with your management, always.
How long does it take to get there?
So I like early
It's in
morning
Arkansas.
flights. So, I leave at 5:10 a.m. and I will get there at 1 p.m. So just a connection
Where do you have to fly?
connection in Denver, fly into Bentonville.
Oh,
Walmart space?
President
Yeah,
Bill
Walmart.
Clinton is from there. Isn't he?
No.
You know what? I will learn more and I'll bring back.
Yeah.
Arkansas.
He's not from Benton. He's from Arkansas.
Former governor.
State governor.
take a winter coat.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it can get colder in that part of the country than here.
Is it in East Coast?
No,
No.
Arkansas is in
Middle.
Oh,
just
That's
above
far enough south.
Oklahoma.
trying to picture map. Okay.
Kansas, it's
Oh.
like a arc.
It's been a minute.
Bill Clinton, that's all I know.
Everything you always wanted to know about US geography and more. What do you think, Courtney?
Well, good afternoon. I was just gonna say, when I went to law school in Indiana, one of my friends said, I don't even know where that is. And I said, well,
Arkansas
it's in the
or
United
Indiana.
States. Anyways, that concludes the geography lesson for today. Good afternoon, board. Good to be here. As the chair mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, Mr. Anderson is on vacation. He is modeling pretty good vacation behavior. Either that, he doesn't have internet. I did get, either way, I really just heard from him once before the holiday, a flurry of forwarded emails and a text, but otherwise he has really been disconnected and enjoying his time away. He will be gone through next week. I believe he will be back for your roundtable on Thursday, the 7th, but I will be here again on the 2nd. So if you have any needs between now and then, feel free to reach out as always. Just two updates I wanted to share with your board. One was related to, both actually are kind of related tangentially to the topics you've heard today. One being that we are, the offices, a lot of our office will also be attending under Sheriff Massey's swearing in, and the office is working hard to make sure all the process paperwork with Kevin Moth and A&T is all in order so things go smoothly on Friday morning. Second, kind of related to budget and property taxes. Some of you may have seen an article in the paper a few weeks ago that the Governor Kotek has been convening a task force, which I'm just calling to save Portland, ideas to kind of revitalize business and citizen participation downtown with all the challenges they're facing. And one of the proposals that was noted in the paper was a 3-year moratorium on new taxes. The articles talk specifically about income tax measures. And I just wanted to reiterate that while we don't know much from that article about what the proposal might be or what it might look like, that would require a legislative action to do a moratorium on an income tax moratorium. But I worked with Jason Bush in our office, who's a real expert in property taxes, and to do a property tax, which would impact some of our local options, it'd probably require a constitutional amendment, because when Measure 50 came in, it made pretty clear that the ability to make local option property AV taxes is a local decision and one that we take to the voters in the taxing district. So not knowing a lot from that article, I just want to make you aware that we are watching it, and we will be continuing to check in with you as those proposals might develop more clearly or move forward.
Thank you for following up on that.
You're welcome.
I almost jumped out of my skin when I read it.
And that's all for me.
Thank you. Mr. Jockers.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sitting in today for Diane. As you know, she had her surgery last Wednesday. Went very well. She's at home recovering, and mostly modeling recovery behavior, but staying in touch as need be. We've got a team in place to cover in her absence. She starts physical therapy on Thursday, so right back on things there. Yes, day after tomorrow. It's pretty incredible. She'll be playing hopscotch before we know it.
Even CEOs go on vacation, take medical leave, take family leave. All part of a great place to work.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. The other thing is thank you very much for pulling the item off consent for action today on the operating IGA. We will be having our partners from the city of Hillsborough joining us tonight, City Manager Ravi Hammond and Assistant City Manager Rahim Haja, and maybe a few other other people from staff that have worked very hard on this project over the last year and a half. They'll have a short presentation before asking you to take action on that. And also would like to get together and take a picture with the board on that action.
Do we
City-
have both logos?
We have both logos. Yes, we got those logos done. And just as you saw in your board memo, the city of Hillsborough approved this unanimously just a couple of weeks ago. So this is a great step, real milestone.
It's already, adjusted on the agenda. Yeah.
So that's all I have. Thank you. That's great.
Thank you. Anything else for today? Thank you very much for a very intense set of topics for this afternoon. And we'll see you at 6:30 in the auditorium. Thank you.